Anna Scott, 31, stood by her living room window in Lincoln Park, Chicago, watching the early morning light filter through gray clouds. Her blonde hair, cut to shoulder length, had lost some of its luster after weeks of overtime at the office. The deepening shadows under her blue-gray eyes suggested she had slept less than 5 hours, a pattern that had become routine for her. She worked as a mid-level marketing manager for a large corporation, a position she'd held for 8 years, long enough for it to feel both familiar and oddly stifling. Her modest one-bedroom apartment was tidy, but possessed a certain emptiness that reflected her current state of mind. The walls held framed photographs of family trips from years ago, each one a soft reminder of what she'd lost. 5 years earlier, her parents, Robert and Elaine Scott, had passed away in a car accident, leaving Anna reeling with a grief she never fully managed to articulate. This apartment, with its carefully chosen furniture and strict organization, was her attempt at anchoring herself to something solid, yet the silence often reminded her of just how alone she felt. By 5:30 a.m. sharp, she was dressed in running tights and a light jacket. Stepping outside, she jogged her regular route along the Lake Michigan shoreline. The usual crowds of early joggers were thinner on that chilly weekday, but Anna found solace in the steady rhythm of her footsteps and the crisp lake breeze. By 7:15, she returned home, showered, and slipped into a conservative black pantsuit that had grown slightly loose from stress-induced weight loss. She grabbed a protein bar on her way out, a hurried ritual that replaced any notion of a leisurely breakfast. The workday began at 8 a.m. at her corporate high-rise downtown, where she routinely stayed until at least 7 p.m. Her direct boss, Richard Bentley, was known for his unwavering allegiance to upper management. Anna had learned to navigate his prickly demeanor, but every interaction left her feeling drained. Lately, rumors of a company-wide restructuring circulated among her colleagues, fueling anxious whispers in the break room. Some believed the marketing department might face the brunt of the cuts, and Anna found herself increasingly uncertain of her once stable role. That evening, after a 10-hour day riddled with tense client calls and endless emails, she arrived home exhausted. No sooner had she kicked off her heels than her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend, Samantha Sam Chen. Sam, 33, stood in stark contrast to Anna's reserved nature. Petite, with lively eyes and a warm laugh, Sam worked as a nurse and possessed a fearless charm that drew people to her effortlessly. She was forever encouraging Anna to live a little. That evening's text read, "I've got this great guy for you to meet. Dinner on Friday. Let me know." Anna typed a polite thanks, but felt no excitement at the prospect. Her last relationship, a 5-year romance with an ambitious executive named Thomas, had ended when he chose a career move across the country over their future together. Since then, she'd buried herself in work, convincing herself that climbing the corporate ladder was the safest way to avoid heartbreak. But the hollowness she felt whenever she returned to her silent apartment reminded her that security came at a price. It was nearly midnight when Anna finally closed her laptop, having reviewed the day's performance metrics. She stepped into her bedroom and paused by the dresser where a framed photograph of her parents waited. In the picture, Robert and Elaine Scott beamed with pride, each with an arm around Anna's shoulders. She had been freshly out of college then, hopeful and full of plans for the future. Now, as she gazed at their faces, an ache spread through her chest. She murmured, "I wish you were both here," a quiet confession in the stillness of the night. Before turning out the light, Anna checked her work email one last time. An unread message from Human Resources appeared, a mandatory meeting the next day at 9 a.m. Her pulse quickened, recalling the rumors about restructuring. Unable to stop her mind from racing, she set her phone on the nightstand and took a steadying breath. As she lay in bed, that same old fear crept in, the worry of losing more than she could bear. It had been years since she'd felt genuine optimism, and now, faced with uncertainty, she couldn't shake the unsettling thought that something big was about to change. Anna arrived at the office with a forced composure, forcing herself to smile at the receptionist and greet a few co-workers with polite nods. At precisely 9 a.m., she stepped into a small, windowless conference room. The fluorescent lights flickered slightly, heightening her sense of unease. Seated at the table were Richard Bentley, her balding, thick-set boss known for his cold pragmatism, and Victoria, a human resources representative with a clipboard and an unreadable expression. Richard gestured for Anna to sit. "Anna," he began, eyes skimming a document in front of him, "thank you for coming." There was no warmth in his tone, only corporate efficiency. Victoria offered a tight, professional smile and read from the paper in front of her. "Due to realignment of our business strategy and related cost management measures, your position in the marketing department has been eliminated, effective immediately." Anna felt as though the room shrank around her. She clung to each word, hoping she'd misunderstood, but the official phrases, "position eliminated," "severance package," were unavoidable. She wanted to protest, to ask why her 8 years of dedicated service and strong performance reviews meant nothing. Instead, she managed a hollow nod, her throat too tight to speak. Richard briefly cleared his throat. "We truly appreciate your contributions," he said mechanically, as if reciting lines from a script. With that, the meeting ended. Anna left the room with a severance packet clutched against her chest. Meanwhile, across town, Dennis Matthews, 35, was heading into a different kind of meeting. Tall, with light brown hair that fell in soft waves, he sported a hint of stubble that complemented his easy smile. He was a high school history teacher at a public school in a lower-income neighborhood of Chicago. Many saw him as an anchor of kindness and unwavering dedication, but on this particular day, he felt heavy with concern. Funding for after-school programs had been cut again, and he was meeting with the school's administration to beg for reconsideration. Inside the sparsely decorated main office, the principal BD, Stanley Parker, a 62-year-old man with a rigid stance and a preference for spreadsheets over actual students, glanced at Dennis's request. "We just don't have the budget," Parker muttered, tapping his pen against the table. "I'm sorry, but the district wants results, and test scores take priority over extracurriculars." Dennis tried to argue that the students needed holistic support, especially those from struggling communities, but Parker wouldn't budge. "We all have to adapt," the principal insisted. "Do your best with what we have." Back in downtown Chicago, a fierce thunderstorm rolled in without warning. By lunchtime, sheets of rain pummeled the city. Anna, in a daze, packed her few belongings from her cubicle into a small cardboard box. It felt surreal, gathering personal trinkets and office accolades she'd spent almost a decade accumulating. Co-workers offered half-hearted condolences before scurrying back to their tasks. By the time Anna stepped outside, the wind had turned her umbrella inside out, and rain assaulted her neatly pressed suit. Dennis concluded his meeting feeling defeated, stepping out of the school board's building into the same tempest. His reliable grey Honda Civic was parked at the far side of the lot. Navigating puddles, he mentally replayed the conversation, frustrated by the system's lack of empathy. As he buckled in, he glanced at a sticky note on his dashboard, an inspirational quote he often shared with his students. "History is more than dates and wars. It's about people who overcome." The words gave him a momentary lift, though the tension in his shoulders remained. Anna, soaked to the bone, hugged the cardboard box containing her office souvenirs. She shivered under the overhang of a bus stop, waiting for the route that would take her back to Lincoln Park. She checked the time, realized it was late afternoon, and wondered how everything had unraveled so fast. Only that morning, she'd worried about departmental rumors. Now she was unemployed with no safety net aside from a modest severance. In another part of the city, Dennis gripped the steering wheel, preoccupied with thoughts of his students. He was scheduled for another meeting, this time with the school district's director about next year's curriculum. His heart felt as stormy as the weather, weighed down by concern for the kids he taught and the roadblocks that kept multiplying. Chicago's late-day sky turned a deeper gray, blending with the towering skyline. The storm threatened to worsen, lightning streaking through the clouds. For Anna and Dennis, this day felt like a turning point, though neither could guess how their paths would collide. Rain, thunder, and looming anxiety hovered over them both, setting the stage for the moment everything would begin to change. By the time Anna reached her usual bus stop, her feet were soaked, and her once polished black pumps were stained with dirty rainwater. She checked her phone with trembling fingers, desperate to confirm the bus schedule. The screen displayed the dreaded realization she had missed the last bus by a mere 2 minutes. Her heart sank. Another would not arrive for at least an hour. She glanced around at the deserted sidewalk, water streaming off the metal bench. As the rain pounded relentlessly on the shelter's awning, Anna's mind churned through memories of times she'd chosen security over risk. She recalled how, years ago, she had passed up the chance to study abroad in London because she feared leaving her stable job. Then there was the time she rejected an offer from a promising startup, worried it might be too uncertain. Each time, she'd convinced herself she was making the responsible choice. But where had that led her? Standing here, fired on a stormy day, she felt her past caution had only kept her pinned to unfulfilling roles. A single taxi sped by, its light off, ignoring her frantic wave. Anna tried ordering an Uber, but her credit card was inexplicably declined. Perhaps some fraud alert triggered by the severance check or the out-of-the-ordinary expenses that day. Her frustration mounted. How could so many things go wrong at once? Not far away, Dennis navigated the heavy traffic, dark clouds rolling overhead. His meeting with the director had ended earlier than planned, leaving him free to head home. But the beating rain tested his visibility, and he drove carefully, keenly aware of the slick roads. He found himself reflecting on a night 2 years before when he'd been in an accident. No one had stopped to help him on that deserted stretch of highway. The memory still stung, both physically and emotionally. He'd promised himself that if he ever encountered someone in need, he wouldn't hesitate to assist. Up ahead, Dennis spotted the faint outline of a woman huddled at a bus stop. The bench was partially flooded, and she appeared drenched from head to toe. Her slim figure was almost lost in the rain's intensity. As he got closer, he noticed the line of her shoulders, rigid with cold or despair. Maybe both. His first instinct was concern. The second was a moment of caution. His sister, Lauren, had warned him repeatedly about picking up strangers in the city. But then he thought of that lonely highway from 2 years ago, when all he'd wanted was a single car to pull over. Anna, meanwhile, considered walking the 5 kilometers home. She had no umbrella and felt a dull ache in her feet from standing in heels all day. Nevertheless, with no bus coming soon and no functioning ride app, it seemed her only option. She pulled her phone from her pocket to call her best friend, Sam, but only got voicemail. Likely, Sam was deep in her nursing shift, tending to patients and unable to take personal calls. It was then that a modest grey Honda Civic pulled up next to the curb. The engine hummed softly amid the downpour. Through the passenger window, Anna could see a man's silhouette, his figure outlined by the car's interior light. Though her guard was up, Chicago could be a dangerous place. She felt a glimmer of hope flicker inside her. The man in the car rolled down his window a few inches, "Excuse me," he called out. "Are you okay? Do you need a ride somewhere?" Rain dripped from the tip of Anna's nose as she studied the stranger's face. Kind eyes, she noted, though she could barely see them through the sheets of water. The tension of the day hung on her like a weight, and she hesitated. Every cautionary tale of city life ran through her mind. She could almost hear Sam's voice telling her never to accept rides from strangers. Yet in that moment, the combination of exhaustion and the memory of her own father's kindness tugged at her. Her father, Robert, had once told her, "Sometimes help comes from the unlikeliest places." Anna glanced down the empty street, the reality of the miles ahead pressing in. Without a bus on the horizon, she was nearing the edge of desperation. With her heart pounding, Anna took a step closer, water splashing around her ankles. She opened her mouth to respond, uncertain whether her voice would betray her apprehension. That single step began the most fateful decision she'd ever make, one that neither she nor the man offering help could possibly foresee. Dennis Matthews lowered the car window a bit more, letting the humid air swirl in. He could see the worry etched on the woman's face as she weighed his offer. He tried to keep his voice calm and reassuring. "It's pouring out here. I'm not some weirdo, I promise," he said, offering a small, uncertain smile. "I'm a teacher at Westwood Public High, just finished a meeting nearby." The words tumbled out quickly, as if he felt compelled to explain himself before she could judge him otherwise. Anna stood there, shivering in the rain. She looked at the soaking cardboard box in her arms and then back at the man in the driver's seat. In the back of her mind, she recalled her own unfortunate experience 2 years prior, a mugging in a parking lot that had left her anxious about trusting strangers. Yet this man seemed different. His posture was slightly awkward, as though he wasn't accustomed to offering rides to complete strangers either. "I don't live too far away, but walking in this storm," she trailed off, feeling a surge of dread at the thought of trudging through flooded sidewalks in her ruined heels. Her skepticism lingered, but something about the man's genuine concern and the memory of her father's advice nudged her forward. Another clap of thunder rattled the nearby storefronts, intensifying the sense of urgency. Slowly, she nodded. "Thank you," she managed, voice trembling. Opening the car door, she slid into the passenger seat, careful not to drip too much water onto the worn upholstery. "Anna," she said softly, setting her box on her lap. She was still on edge, but it felt right to introduce herself. "Dennis," he replied, eyes flicking to hers for a moment. In that brief exchange, Anna noticed the faint lines at the corners of his brownish-green eyes. Lines that suggested he smiled more often than he frowned. She took comfort in that detail, letting herself breathe a little easier. As Dennis merged back into traffic, the steady rhythm of windshield wipers filled the silence. "Sorry about the mess," he offered, nodding to the passenger-side floor, where a stack of old lesson plans and a few reusable grocery bags lay in a heap. "I usually keep the car cleaner, but things have been hectic." Anna managed a slight smile. "No worries." "I'm the one soaking your seat." She glanced around. On the back seat was a hardcover book about American history, a half-drunk bottle of water, and a battered teacher's tote bag. Hanging from the rearview mirror was a school ID badge, confirming that Dennis was indeed a teacher. That small detail helped lessen her lingering unease. He shifted in his seat, careful to keep his eyes on the road, but genuinely curious. "If you don't mind me asking, what's in the box?" Anna cleared her throat, feeling a twinge of self-consciousness. "My things from work. I was let go today." She attempted a wry laugh, but it came out shaky. "A real alignment of misfortune, I guess." A flicker of empathy passed over Dennis's face. "I'm sorry to hear that. Honestly, it's been a rough day on my end, too. Budget cuts at the school. Tough times everywhere." He paused, navigating a deep puddle. I know it's small comfort, but you're not alone. A lot of folks are struggling right now. Anna clutched the box tighter, nodding. She found it oddly comforting to hear about someone else's hardships, not because she wanted him to suffer, but because the shared vulnerability felt human. That does help, she admitted softly, looking out at the endless sheets of rain. Flashes of lightning illuminated the darkening sky, and the city streets glistened with a mixture of headlights and reflections of neon signs. The tension in the car, though still present, began to ease as they traded bits of small talk. Dennis asked about her route home, and Anna gave directions in a quiet voice, noticing how he respected her space and made no invasive inquiries. Every so often, the storm intensified, thunder booming overhead. Each roar reminded Anna of the uneasy feeling that had shadowed her all day. Yet, sitting in the warmth of a stranger's car, she felt an inexplicable sense of solace. There was something in Dennis's voice that made her feel safe. If she closed her eyes for a moment, she might even forget about the crisis that awaited her back at her now former job. Above all, she felt a surprising flicker of courage, some small voice within telling her this decision to accept help might be more significant than she realized. Even if she didn't fully understand why, she clung to that possibility, letting it gently counter the fears that threatened to consume her. Inside Dennis's Honda Civic, time stretched beyond its usual limits. The city's traffic was in chaos, with snarled intersections and red taillights flickering like fireflies through the relentless downpour. On the radio, a soft jazz station played quietly, offering a soothing backdrop to the storm. Anna noticed a small photograph clipped to the sun visor. It showed Dennis standing beside an older man, presumably his father. Both were smiling broadly, suggesting a bond of warmth she found touching. She clutched her wet cardboard box, feeling the dampness seeping through her jacket. Despite her discomfort, she couldn't help but be curious about the man beside her. He seemed unusually calm for someone driving in a raging storm, as though he faced bigger challenges every day. Clearing her throat, she ventured, "So, you teach history. Do you, enjoy it?" Dennis nodded, pausing as he negotiated a tricky merge. "Yeah, I do. It's not the easiest job, especially lately with the budget cuts. But I've always believed in the power of stories, real stories, to inspire people. Helps us see where we've been, where we're going." He glanced at her briefly, then refocused on the road. "It keeps me hopeful, most days anyway." She appreciated his earnestness. "I'm sure your students are lucky to have someone who cares about more than just test scores." In the gloom of the storm, their exchange felt intimate, like they were sharing a small corner of light in the midst of darkness. When the car slowed at yet another intersection, Anna noticed a battered notebook on the dashboard. Its cover read, "Strategies for at-risk students." "You, do extra work with your students?" she asked, genuinely intrigued. Dennis followed her gaze and smiled. "I try. Some kids are brilliant but need a leg up. I'm working on a new after-school program, history clubs, field trips, that sort of thing, but funding is tight." A hint of sadness flickered across his face. For a moment, Anna considered telling him about her own job in marketing, about how she'd spent years striving to craft polished campaigns and sales pitches, how the cold phrase, realignment of business strategy, had become her new reality this morning. She hesitated, still wrestling with her emotions, before finally admitting, "I was a marketing manager. 8 years. Today they told me my position was redundant." Her voice caught, and she realized she was fighting back tears. Dennis's gaze softened in sympathy. "I'm sorry. That must have been a shock. I've known friends who went through layoffs. It really flips your world upside down." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "But maybe it's a chance for something else. You know, a new path." She wiped at her damp eyes, grateful for his kindness. "I'm not sure if I believe in second chances," she said quietly. "I've been clinging to stability for so long." The conversation tapered into a thoughtful silence. Outside, the rain hammered the windshield, and the rhythmic wipers struggled to keep up. The detours added extra minutes to their route, minutes that forced them into a level of intimacy neither had planned. It was easier to open up when you were tucked away from the rest of the world, the storm acting as a cocoon against outside distractions. Eventually, Dennis asked, "Where do you live?" Anna gave him the directions to her Lincoln Park apartment. He nodded, mentally mapping the route. "That's a decent neighborhood. You like it there?" "It's quiet," she admitted. "A little too quiet, sometimes." She thought of her solitary dinners, the hours spent drafting marketing pitches in her living room. The hush of her apartment no longer felt like a haven, but rather a reminder of everything she had lost. As they inched forward in traffic, Dennis switched lanes, giving Anna a faint smile. "I'm a firm believer in fate," he said, almost as if speaking to himself. "Strange how people cross paths. I mean, I never stop for anyone at bus stops, but tonight, I don't know. It felt like the right thing to do." Anna met his eyes for a second, feeling a spark of connection. So small and fleeting she questioned whether it was real. Yet that spark lingered. It promised that, beneath this chaotic moment, there might be a shared sense of possibility and hope. She let out a long breath, uncertain but oddly reassured. "I'm glad you did," she finally said, voice just above a whisper. And in the hush that followed, the two of them, both strangers and yet not entirely so, let the storm's roar fade into the background, bound together by a kindness that neither had anticipated giving or receiving. The windshield wipers beat a steady rhythm, attempting to clear the endless rain as Dennis guided his car through the waterlogged streets. Beside him, Anna sat quietly, her thoughts still circling around her sudden job loss. An odd calm settled in the Honda Civic, broken only by the gentle hum of the heater. Finally, she drew in a breath and decided to share more. "You know," she began softly, "losing my job wasn't the only thing weighing on me today. My parents passed away in an accident 5 years ago. I've just been surviving, I guess." Dennis flicked his eyes toward her, a glimmer of empathy crossing his face. "I'm sorry," he replied. "I lost my mum to cancer a while back. My dad, Gerald, he's got Parkinson's, so I look after him when I can. Life can flip on you fast." Anna felt a surge of recognition at that. A shared sense of grief and responsibility drew them closer, even though they were relative strangers. She remembered her own father's words about how the most important encounters often come at unexpected times. It felt surreal to be divulging such intimate details to a man she'd just met, but in the insulated space of the car, it seemed natural. A distant clap of thunder rattled the windows. Anna glanced out at the sheets of rain cascading down the tall buildings. "It's strange," she said. "I haven't had a real heart-to-heart with anyone in a while, maybe since before my last relationship ended. Thomas, my ex, wasn't exactly keen on emotional conversations. We just kind of coasted until everything fell apart." Dennis nodded thoughtfully, navigating around a stalled vehicle. "I get that. I've had my share of people who didn't want to dig too deep. Sometimes sharing burdens scares folks. They'd rather pretend everything's fine." He hesitated, then added, "It's nice to talk to someone who understands that we're all carrying something heavy." Anna studied him for a moment. With his slightly unkempt hair and the scruff on his jaw, he looked every bit the approachable teacher he claimed to be. "Chicago's a big city," she said. "Yet, somehow, I've never run into you before. You mentioned Westwood Public High, right?" "I live just a few miles from there. I've been teaching at Westwood for 5 years, Dennis explained. "And trust me, the city might be huge, but sometimes it still feels like a small town. Paths cross in the oddest ways." They drove past a row of dimly lit storefronts. The conversation meandered from the best pizza spots in Chicago to the quiet parks near Lincoln Park. With every shared anecdote, the tension of the stormy night seemed to recede. Even the howling wind outside felt less threatening. Anna realized she hadn't felt this sense of ease with someone in a very long time. It was as if they'd tumbled into each other's lives precisely when they needed a confidant. Soon, Dennis brought up his father again, explaining how he balanced teaching full-time with helping Gerald manage his symptoms. "He hates being fussed over," he said, smiling wryly. "And honestly, I hate feeling like I can't do more. But I'm grateful for every day I still have with him." Anna brushed a strand of damp hair behind her ear. "I can't even imagine," she said gently. "It's been hard enough not having my parents around to share my ups and downs. I'd give anything to have them here, nagging me or telling me when I'm making a mistake." The sadness in her voice was unmistakable, but there was also an undercurrent of warmth, an acknowledgement that listening to Dennis talk about his father reminded her of what family meant. Silence settled between them for a moment, a tender acknowledgement of mutual loss. Then Dennis gripped the steering wheel and let out a soft sigh. "I guess that's why nights like this make me feel hopeful, in a weird way. We get these reminders that we're not alone, even if it's just a conversation in the middle of a storm." Anna nodded, her lips curving into a faint smile. "I feel it too," she admitted. "Like maybe everything had to fall apart for me to find a different path." They continued on through the flooded streets, both aware that this unlikely connection was stirring something inside them, an inkling that life had more in store for them than just hardship. Neither spoke it aloud, but each sensed they were witnessing the start of a fragile, undeniable bond. By the time Dennis pulled up in front of Anna's apartment building, the relentless downpour had finally eased into a soft drizzle. The night still felt damp and heavy, as though the storm lingered in the humid air. Anna pointed out her building, a sturdy brick structure with tall, narrow windows, typical of Chicago's older neighborhoods. A flickering street lamp lit the entrance, revealing a small lobby behind glass doors. They sat in the car a moment longer, reluctant to part ways so abruptly. Anna cradled her soggy cardboard box, her gaze shifting between the building and Dennis. "Thanks again," she began, voice quiet. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't stopped." Dennis offered a modest smile. "Happy to help. Wish I could have done more." His hand lingered near the ignition, as if he, too, wasn't quite ready to say goodbye. Before either of them could speak further, the passenger door opened abruptly. They turned to see an elderly woman with a bright floral umbrella peering in, worry etched into her wrinkled features. "Anna, dear, I've been looking for you," she exclaimed. "It's Eleanor Winters from upstairs. We've got a leak in your bathroom." "Water's seeping through my ceiling." Her voice trembled with urgency. Anna's eyes widened in alarm. "Oh no, how bad is it?" "Bad enough that I thought I should call you." Eleanor cast a quick, appraising glance at Dennis. The older woman's sharp eyes flicked between them, hinting at curiosity, but her immediate concern prevailed. "We'd better get upstairs before the whole place floods." In the rush of the moment, any chance to exchange numbers or properly say farewell vanished. Anna fumbled with the car door. I'm so sorry, I have to deal with this," she said, turning back to Dennis. "Thank you again for everything." "It's okay," Dennis replied, lowering his window. "I understand. Good luck with the leak." He wanted to ask for her phone number, or at least offer his, but he could see the panic written across her face. It felt selfish to hold her up. Anna hopped out, shielding her cardboard box beneath her jacket. Eleanor held the umbrella overhead, scolding her gently for getting caught in the storm. As they hurried into the lobby, Anna threw one last glance over her shoulder. Through the drizzle, she spotted Dennis still parked by the curb, his expression caught between concern and resignation. She opened her mouth to wave or call out, but the moment slipped away as the building doors closed. Dennis stayed there a few seconds, wrestling with the urge to follow her inside, but he didn't want to overstep. Eventually, he sighed and checked his phone, noticing the time. He had essays to grade and an early appointment at the school. The day's events felt surreal, like a dream that ended too soon. With one last look at the dimly lit lobby, he drove off into the night. Inside the building, Anna and Eleanor burst into her apartment. The faint trickle of water echoed in the hall, and Eleanor pointed toward the bathroom. "Landlord's on his way, but I knew you'd want to see this." Sure enough, a small puddle had formed around the base of the sink, with droplets dripping steadily from a cracked pipe. Setting down her soaked box, Anna called the landlord and began mopping up the water. The stress of her job loss fused with the new worry of an apartment issue. As she bent over with a stack of towels, she felt an odd pang of regret. She realized she'd allowed that moment with Dennis to slip away without securing any way to find him again. Yet practicality prevailed. She had to fix the leak, salvage her belongings, and face the immediate drama. For the next hour, she and Eleanor worked side by side, sopping up water until a plumber arrived. Though Anna was grateful for Eleanor's help, she couldn't keep her mind from drifting back to Dennis. It felt like she'd met someone remarkable, only to have him vanish as quickly as he appeared. Later that night, after the plumber had patched the pipe and Eleanor had gone to bed, Anna sank onto her couch. She was exhausted, but her thoughts refused to settle. She replayed the drive through the storm, the warmth in Dennis's voice, and the fleeting connection they'd shared. A heavy emptiness settled in her chest, as if a door had swung open to a brighter world, then abruptly slammed shut. Whatever spark they'd ignited, she feared it might have been extinguished by the demands of ordinary life. For the next few days, Anna threw herself into the daunting task of job hunting. She'd wake early, scrolling through online listings and sending out applications. Her severance package wouldn't stretch far in a city as expensive as Chicago, so the pressure mounted quickly. Each rejection email chipped away at her confidence. The corporate world felt colder than ever. So many applicants, so few vacancies. An old colleague mentioned Wellington and Associates, a reputable financial consulting firm known for offering unique perspectives to its clients. Hoping for a fresh start, Anna scheduled an informational interview. She'd heard that Doug Wellington, the founder, was notoriously demanding but also valued employees who showed grit and resourcefulness. The rumor both intimidated and intrigued her. Meanwhile, across town, Dennis was absorbed in his own battles. The recent budget slashes at Westwood Public High threatened to eliminate several after-school programs. He spent his free periods drafting proposals to the administration, highlighting how these initiatives kept vulnerable students engaged. The principal, Stanley Parker, remained unmoved. "We don't have the funds," he repeated, almost like a mantra, but Dennis refused to give up. One of Dennis's students, Miguel Hernandez, a bright 17-year-old with a knack for historical analysis, had confided his plan to drop out and work full-time to support his family. The conversation weighed heavily on Dennis. "You have real talent," he'd told Miguel, "and a future in college if you stick with it." Yet Miguel seemed set on helping his parents pay bills. Dennis felt torn. How could he, a single teacher, counter the harsh realities of poverty? In the midst of these mounting challenges, both Anna and Dennis found themselves preoccupied by fleeting memories of that rainy night. Anna caught herself scanning the streets for an older model Honda Civic, heart leaping at every car that resembled his. She even considered waiting at the same bus stop at around the same time, but logic and a bit of pride held her back. Dennis, for his part, replayed their conversation whenever he drove home in the rain. He'd glance at the empty passenger seat and recall Anna's anxious smile. Once he even circled the block near Lincoln Park, wondering if he might randomly spot her. But as the days passed, the encounter began to feel more like a pleasant dream than a real possibility. Anna's best friend, Sam, noticed her restless demeanor. One evening, while Anna was hunched over her laptop revising her resume, Sam leaned against the kitchen counter. "You're acting different," she observed. "Before, you'd just be upset about losing your job. But now it's like you're searching for something else." Anna hesitated, deciding whether to confide in Sam about Dennis. She opted for caution, still unsure what that encounter truly meant. "Maybe it's just the stress of everything," Anna replied, forcing a half-smile. Sam frowned. "Stress can't explain why you keep peering out the window or glancing at your phone every 5 minutes. What's going on?" Anna gave a dismissive shrug, but Sam's knowing look said she wasn't fooled. "Fine," Sam sighed. "I won't pry. But if there's something or someone you're missing, don't let your fear hold you back." After a moment, Anna set aside her laptop. "I'll figure it out, Sam. First, I need a job." Her friend nodded, though her curious gaze lingered. A day later, Anna walked into the Wellington and Associates building for her preliminary meeting with HR. The sleek lobby featured polished floors, minimalist decor, and high ceilings that radiated corporate ambition. Waiting for her appointment, she felt small but also oddly hopeful. Something about this place, despite its formal veneer, suggested new beginnings. She was eventually ushered into the office of Angela Rivera, the firm's head of HR. Angela, a poised woman in her early 40s, greeted Anna with a warm handshake. "I've looked over your background," she said, scanning Anna's resume. "A mid-level marketing manager with years of experience. Just the kind of grit Mr. Wellington respects." Anna's spirits lifted. They discussed her skills and future goals, leaving Anna with the promise of a follow-up call. Walking out of the building, Anna felt a spark of possibility. The firm wasn't guaranteed to hire her, but at least she'd made an impression. She let herself imagine, just for a moment, a future where she thrived in a place that valued hard work and integrity. "Could it be that my worst day is leading me somewhere better?" she wondered. And though the thought of Dennis hovered in the back of her mind, she focused on regaining her footing. If fate could bring them together once, she told herself, maybe it would do so again, just not on her timetable. 2 weeks later, Anna found herself navigating the final round of interviews at Wellington and Associates. It was an unseasonably chilly morning for late spring, and she wore a tailored navy suit that she hoped projected both professionalism and approachability. Inside the towering office building, she clutched a slim folder of references and took steady breaths to calm her racing heart. She wasn't alone. Sitting in the same reception area was Veronica Palmer, a poised 34-year-old with impeccable posture and a flawless resume, Harvard MBA, glowing recommendations, and sharp instincts. Veronica offered Anna a polite but cool smile, then flicked her gaze back to her phone. A subtle tension lingered in the air, as though they both knew only one could secure the role. When Doug Wellington himself appeared, a tall, imposing figure with silver hair, he beckoned them into a conference room. Anna presented her marketing strategies with clear conviction, determined to stand out. She'd prepared for days, hoping her real-world experience would matter more than Veronica's Ivy League credentials. During the Q&A, Anna's sincerity seemed to capture Wellington's attention. She could sense his intrigue, though he kept his face impassive. At the end, he dismissed both women, saying, "We'll be in touch." Meanwhile, Dennis was wrestling with a different set of challenges. Inspired to help students like Miguel, he initiated a new extracurricular project, a partnership with the art department to create a living history exhibit, combining personal narratives and creativity to spark the students' interest. Gabriela Santos, the passionate 38-year-old art teacher from Brazil, embraced the idea. "We can show them that history isn't just dates, it's their own families, their own stories," she enthused. Despite limited resources, they soldiered on, collecting oral histories from grandparents in the community. In the evenings, Dennis faced mounting family obligations. Lauren, his 33-year-old sister, liked to remind him he was spending too much energy on lost causes at the school. Over a tense family dinner at their father Gerald's house, she pressed him. "Dennis, you're a talented teacher, but these kids aren't your only responsibility. Dad's condition is worsening. You can't take everything on alone." Gerald, in a normally gentle soul, mustered a firm tone. "I appreciate your concern, Lauren, but it's Dennis's choice how he helps his students. I don't need constant fussing." His hands shook slightly, betraying the early-stage Parkinson's. Dennis glanced between them, uncomfortable. He loved his family fiercely, but he wished they could see how vital his work was, not just to him, but to the students. Across town, Anna returned to her apartment after the final interview feeling drained. As she fumbled with her keys, her neighbor, Mrs. Eleanor Winters, who had helped with the leak, emerged. "Any good news?" she asked, arms folded over her knitted cardigan. "Not yet," Anna replied with a forced smile, "but I'm hopeful." Mrs. Winters, 76, with a kindly face framed by silver curls, studied Anna for a moment. "Your eyes still look troubled," she observed softly. "Troubled and a bit wistful." Anna blushed. She wasn't sure why Mrs. Winters always seemed to read her so easily. "I suppose I'm just worried about the future," she said at last, avoiding the topic of the stranger in the storm. "You know, job-wise and everything." Mrs. Winters nodded sagely. "Well, dear, sometimes we worry ourselves into missing what's right in front of us. Let life surprise you now and then." She patted Anna's arm gently and headed back to her own apartment. Later that night, Anna replayed Mrs. Winters's words, "Let life surprise you." She had to admit she'd become quite skilled at ignoring her own instincts, especially when it came to risking her heart. Though she was grateful for Sam's support, she'd kept the memory of Dennis mostly to herself. A growing part of her wondered if that was a mistake. As days turned into nights, Anna discovered she wasn't the only one on edge. Veronica Palmer posted snapshots on social media boasting about pending job offers. That subtle intimidation fed Anna's self-doubt, reminding her that the corporate world favored the bold and connected. Yet she clung to the notion that her authenticity mattered. If Wellington and Associates valued substance over flash, then maybe her genuine approach would prevail. Outside her window, the Chicago skyline glistened under a starlit sky. In a modest apartment miles away, Dennis likely sat correcting quizzes or tending to his father, unaware that Anna, too, lay awake, pondering her future. Their paths had crossed so unexpectedly. Could it really be the end of their story? For now, life marched onward, demanding their full attention. But the memory of that rain-soaked evening refused to fade, hinting that a resolution awaited them both if they had the courage to embrace it. Anna's phone buzzed one afternoon with an unrecognized number. She answered hesitantly, heart pounding. "Anna Scott," said a warm, professional voice. "It's Angela Rivera from Wellington and Associates. Mr. Wellington was impressed by your interview. We'd like to offer you a position, marketing consultant on our flagship team." Anna's relief was so palpable, she nearly dropped the phone. "That's fantastic news," she managed, thanking Angela profusely. Moments later, she was doing an impromptu victory dance in her living room. Sam, who'd stopped by to check on her, squealed in delight, grabbing Anna's hands. "Told you, you're unstoppable," she said, pulling her friend into a hug. Anna smiled but felt a surge of nerves. A new job meant new challenges, and she couldn't ignore the faint pang in her heart, reminding her of the teacher who'd helped her on the worst night of her life. Still, progress was progress, and she clung to the hope that fate had a plan. Meanwhile, Dennis found an unexpected ally in Gabriela Santos. She admired his commitment to the students and helped him gather resources for their interdisciplinary project. Soon, they'd assembled a small coalition of dedicated teachers who believed in creating hands-on learning experiences. Together, they'd raise funds through bake sales, car washes, anything to keep the program alive. Their passion drew attention from curious parents who showed up at meetings to learn more. When parents came, so did potential donors. One afternoon, as Dennis scrolled through social media during his lunch break, he spotted an update from James Wilson, an old college friend he hadn't seen in a while. James mentioned an upcoming partnership between his consulting firm and a large finance group, a collaboration aimed at corporate-sponsored educational initiatives. Intrigued, Dennis fired off a message, and within minutes, James replied, "Hey, buddy, let's grab coffee soon. I want to hear about your project." That very evening, Anna headed into the sleek Wellington offices for paperwork and orientation details. She was introduced to Benjamin Taylor, a 45-year-old accountant with a friendly demeanor and years of experience at the firm. "I'll be your mentor of sorts," he said, ushering her into a glass-walled meeting room. "I know the ropes here pretty well. Doug Wellington trusts me to show new hires how we do business." His affable tone put Anna at ease. Benjamin introduced her to Marcus Chen, an analyst in his late 20s with a brilliant mind for data but a shy demeanor. "He's a whiz with numbers," Benjamin explained, patting Marcus on the back. "Sometimes gets lost in the spreadsheets, though." Marcus nodded, offering a cautious smile. Anna sensed the beginnings of a camaraderie that felt refreshingly different from her last corporate job. In the weeks that followed, Anna learned the ins and outs of Wellington and Associates. She admired Doug Wellington's no-nonsense approach, but also appreciated Angela Rivera's focus on employee well-being. Meanwhile, she began picking up whispers about a major educational initiative in the pipeline, a collaboration that could benefit local schools if executed well. She wasn't assigned to that project yet, but the idea sparked her interest. On the other side of town, Dennis met James for coffee at a small cafe. Over steaming mugs, James revealed that his consulting firm had teamed up with Wellington and Associates to explore corporate-funded programs for public schools. "The idea is to improve community outreach," James explained. "I'm the lead from my side. Wellington's lead is still up in the air. Maybe you can come in as a sort of real-world expert." Dennis's eyes lit up. "That's exactly what I've been fighting for. Resources for these kids. I'm in if they'll have me. Let's set up a meeting." James grinned, raising his coffee cup in a toast. Consider it done. Neither Dennis nor Anna realized how close they were to reconnecting. Each was consumed by their respective responsibilities, forging new alliances and tackling personal hurdles. Anna left the office every evening with a sense of purpose, but also a lingering emptiness. She couldn't fully enjoy her success without sharing it with someone who understood her struggles. Dennis, likewise, drove home with fresh optimism about funding his projects, yet a piece of him felt unfulfilled. The memory of that drenched woman in his passenger seat hadn't dimmed. Still, the stage was set. On one side, a dedicated teacher with a vision to transform his school. On the other, a newly hired marketing consultant ready to prove her worth, and somewhere in the bustling nexus of Chicago's corporate and educational systems lay the intersection of their paths. The day they'd finally reconnect was just around the corner. Anna's first day at Wellington and Associates dawned bright and crisp, as though the city decided to gift her a good omen. She arrived early, determined to make a strong impression. Doug Wellington greeted her in the hallway with a curt nod, introducing her to a small team already immersed in a high-pressure project. "We've got a new client we need to impress," he said, handing her a thick folder. "They're the same folks who restructured your old company. Think you can handle it?" Anna's breath caught. She recognized the client's name, Morrison and Reed, the very corporation that had let her go. She forced a composed smile. "I can," she replied, keeping her personal feelings in check. Inside, her stomach churned at the thought of working alongside the people who deemed her position redundant. Still, she reminded herself, this is a chance to prove my worth, not run from the past. Benjamin Taylor caught up with her after the meeting. "Don't let that rattle you," he said in a reassuring tone. "Wellington's testing you, but you've got skills they need. Focus on the deliverables, not the history." He led her to a spacious conference room where Veronica Palmer, now a colleague, was already seated, tapping impatiently on her tablet. "So the rumored star hire has arrived," Veronica said with a smirk. Anna offered a polite greeting but sensed the subtle hostility. Meanwhile, Dennis's week began with another clash against Principal Parker. When Dennis requested approval to expand the after-school history program, Parker dismissed him again. "The school board wants me to funnel resources into improving test scores," Parker huffed. "No budget for anything else." Dennis left the office fuming, but his frustration only fueled his resolve to make the upcoming corporate collaboration work. If the school board wouldn't support him, maybe outside partners could. At home, Dennis struggled with balancing his father's increasing medical needs. Gerald's Parkinson's had progressed enough that simple tasks took much longer. Dennis often worried about leaving him alone. Lauren kept pressuring him to consider a care facility, but the thought of his father in an unfamiliar place broke Dennis's heart. He wanted to keep Gerald in the family home for as long as possible. Anna, too, wrestled with sleepless nights. Her new role demanded that she quickly master the firm's methodology while delivering on the Morrison and Reed project. One evening, she sat by her bedroom window, rereading notes and scanning old marketing data. Rain spattered against the glass, reminding her of that life-changing night a few weeks ago. She closed her eyes, recalling Dennis's steady voice over the hum of the car engine. The ache of not knowing if she'd ever see him again felt sharper than before. Days later, Anna faced her first major challenge, a presentation meant to wow Morrison and Reed's board members. Veronica had slyly forgotten to forward some critical market research in time, making Anna appear unprepared. Anna scrambled to recover, working late with Marcus Chen to rebuild the missing data. On presentation day, her hands trembled from caffeine overload and nerves, but she spoke with genuine conviction. When she finished, Doug Wellington nodded approvingly, while Veronica looked on, a flicker of annoyance crossing her face. Dennis had his own small triumph that same afternoon. Armed with letters from supportive parents, he confronted Parker once more. "These families believe in the program. We just need a little flexibility with budgeting." Parker grudgingly relented, promising a modest allowance for the next term. It wasn't everything Dennis had hoped for, but it was a start, a sign that perseverance could tip the scales. Late that evening, Anna gazed out of her office window, seeing the city alight under a cloudy sky. She felt both invigorated and exhausted. Despite the hurdles, she sensed she was on the brink of a new phase in her life, one that demanded resilience and courage. Across town, Dennis sat in his dimly lit living room, a pile of ungraded essays on one side and his father dozing peacefully on the other. He turned a small plastic pen in his hands, the logo from Anna's old company still faintly visible. He'd found it lodged under the passenger seat. He smiled to himself, wondering if it was some cosmic reminder. He had no idea Anna was likely doing the same, feeling that unshakable pull of fate. Little did they know, their worlds were set to converge yet again in the most unexpected of ways. Anna arrived at Wellington and Associates one brisk morning, feeling an unusual burst of optimism. She'd spent the previous night polishing a creative pitch for a so-called impossible client project, an assignment that Wellington had tossed her way with barely a week's notice. The workload was fierce, but she relished the challenge. After the upheaval of losing her old job, accomplishing something meaningful here felt like a step toward regaining her confidence. Stepping into the glass-walled conference room, she found Doug Wellington already seated, along with Benjamin, Marcus, and a few other senior staff members. Veronica Palmer walked in last, wearing her trademark smirk. Anna ignored Veronica's presence and launched into the presentation she'd prepared, highlighting an inventive approach to online marketing that could solve the client's high turnover problem. As she spoke, she saw a flicker of genuine approval in Wellington's eyes, rare but encouraging. When she finished, the room was silent. Then Wellington nodded. That was solid, Anna. Creative, data-driven, and cost-effective. Good work. Hearing that from the notoriously demanding CEO was no small feat. Veronica offered a clipped, "Well done," though her tone lacked warmth. Nonetheless, Anna felt the weight of her anxiety lift ever so slightly. She realized that, despite the obstacles, she could hold her own in this competitive environment. Meanwhile, Dennis was savoring a small triumph of his own. After weeks of advocating for resources, he'd managed to secure a modest grant from a community group for his after-school history program. Gabriela Santos, the art teacher, had helped organize a fundraiser, and parents contributed what they could. While it wasn't a fortune, it was enough to purchase basic supplies, posters, art materials, even some reference books. Dennis's sense of relief was palpable as he scanned the rows of donated items lined up in a corner of his classroom. On a Friday afternoon, he gathered his students, Miguel among them, and shared the news. "We've got enough to launch our oral history project next month," he announced, beaming. The teenagers applauded, and Miguel offered Dennis a smile that radiated gratitude. That moment reaffirmed Dennis's belief that sometimes seemingly insignificant victories could mean the world to those who needed them most. As the days passed, Anna grew closer to her small circle of allies at Wellington. Benjamin Taylor continued to serve as her informal mentor, guiding her through the nuances of the firm's culture. Marcus Chen, despite his social awkwardness, was proving invaluable with complex data analyses. Together, they formed a tight-knit group that shared mutual respect. During breaks, they exchanged personal stories. Benjamin talking about his teenage daughter, Marcus joking about his childhood in a tiny Ohio town, and Anna cautiously sharing tidbits of her life in Chicago since her parents' passing. Outside of work, Anna also made quiet progress in her personal life. She threw out old mementos from her ex, Thomas, relics that had long weighed her down. She rearranged the furniture in her apartment to create a small home office, a symbol of fresh beginnings. Though she still sometimes felt the pang of loneliness, she took comfort in these deliberate acts of self-renewal. Dennis, meanwhile, dedicated his evenings to refining his innovative curriculum ideas. He and Gabriela collaborated on a pilot lesson combining historical events with art techniques. To their delight, the students embraced the project, infusing it with their own creativity. Soon, word of their progress reached the ears of a few administrators. And though Principal Parker remained skeptical, some board members expressed cautious interest in scaling up their approach. In between grading assignments and preparing lessons, Dennis frequently found himself distracted by thoughts of the stranger he'd driven home. Every so often, he'd pull out the pen he'd discovered in the passenger seat, turning it over in his hands. Late at night, when the house was quiet and his father was asleep, He wondered if that one act of kindness would forever remain a single thread in the tapestry of his life, comforting yet unfinished. Anna, for her part, would occasionally take a different route home, glancing at bus stops or scanning passing cars, the memory of Dennis tugging at her. Though time had blurred the intense immediacy of their encounter, it hadn't erased the warm sense of possibility she'd felt that night. Now and then, she debated telling Sam about him, but a mix of uncertainty and the sheer demands of her new job kept her from doing so. Instead, she focused on the small steps forward, professional recognition, budding friendships, a sense of purpose. Unbeknownst to either of them, the successes they savored, those modest victories, were only preludes to the larger challenges still waiting on the horizon. For Anna, that meant an ethical dilemma that would test her principles. For Dennis, it would involve risking the stability he'd worked so hard to maintain. These triumphs, as gratifying as they were, formed the sturdy groundwork they'd need for the next round of trials, both personal and professional. Anna's newfound confidence was soon put to the test when she stumbled upon suspicious patterns in a key client's financial records. The project files were part of a routine review she'd been assigned, but something about the numbers seemed off. She noticed discrepancies that, if verified, could point to unethical, possibly illegal practices. At first, she wondered if it was merely an accounting error. But the deeper she dug, the more convinced she became that there was intentional deception. Over coffee one afternoon, she confided in Benjamin, who listened quietly, his brow creased in thought. "I've seen odd things like that before," he admitted, voice lowered. "Sometimes executives turn a blind eye if it means keeping a lucrative client. It's a dark corner of corporate life we don't like to talk about." Her chest tightened at the thought. She'd always believed that skill and integrity could coexist in business. Benjamin, seeing her unease, offered a cautious warning. "Just be careful, Anna. Wellington might value your honesty, but corporate politics can be messy. People have lost their jobs over less." That same week, Dennis faced a parallel moral quandary. An anonymous complaint had accused him of favoring Miguel, helping the teenager more than other students. It was no secret Dennis had gone the extra mile to keep Miguel engaged, even offering him extra tutoring sessions. Some jealous classmates, or maybe a cynical faculty member, had raised the issue with the principal's office. When Dennis was called into Principal Parker's office, he expected a measured discussion. Instead, Parker, in his usual rigid manner, demanded an explanation. "We can't have special treatment," he insisted. "This school runs on fairness and standardization." Dennis argued that Miguel needed support due to his precarious home situation, but Parker brushed off the justification. "If word gets out that certain students receive preferential treatment, we could face backlash," he snapped. "You're crossing a line, Matthews." Emerging from Parker's office with a reprimand on his record, Dennis felt a wave of indignation. How could helping a struggling student be seen as wrongdoing? At home, Gerald patted his son's hand. "Sometimes it's not the act itself," he said softly. "It's the system you challenge by doing the right thing." Dennis knew his father was right, but the tension at school made him question whether he could endure the fight much longer. For Anna, each day at the office now felt like a tightrope walk. She discovered more evidence of misrepresented earnings, that a major client had been feeding Wellington and Associates, details that would have severe implications if reported. Her immediate supervisor, a cautious manager named Bryant, advised her to focus on the marketing aspects, not the accounting side. But Anna couldn't ignore the red flags. One evening, as she stayed late reviewing documents, Veronica passed by and glanced at her screen. "You're diving deep," she said casually. Then, catching a glimpse of the spreadsheets, she gave Anna a knowing look. "Not everything in life fits neatly into rules, you know. Sometimes you just do what you have to do to get ahead." It was a cryptic statement, but the subtext was clear. Don't stir the pot unless you're prepared for the consequences. Anna thought about her parents' teachings. They'd raised her to value honesty, even when it was costly. She weighed her options. Reporting her findings could jeopardize her new job, but letting it slide would betray her sense of integrity. She remembered how her old company had abruptly dismissed her with no remorse. She'd sworn never again to be the kind of person who simply stayed silent when something smelled wrong. Across town, Dennis spent another late evening at the school, recording video interviews with students for the oral history project. Gabriella eyed his tired expression. "You okay? You seem burdened." He sighed. "Parker's warning me not to show favoritism, but I won't abandon Miguel or any student who needs help." She nodded approvingly. "You're doing the right thing. Keep going." In separate corners of Chicago, Anna and Dennis found themselves at a crossroads of personal ethics. Both recalled the intangible bond they'd shared during that stormy ride, an unspoken understanding that life tested you in unexpected ways. Though they hadn't crossed paths again, the memory of each other provided a lingering source of courage. It was as if they were each silently cheering the other on, reminding one another to remain steadfast. Little did they know, these dilemmas were merely the beginning. The next steps would either fortify their convictions or shatter them. Either way, the experience would shape who they would become and pave the road for what destiny still had in store. Late one afternoon, Anna returned to her desk after a tense client meeting to find an envelope marked "Confidential." Inside were documents implicating her in a potential data mishandling issue. She scanned the pages in disbelief. The log files indicated changes to the client's financial statements from her computer login. But she'd never made these edits. Stunned, Anna looked over the timestamps. They coincided with a moment she had stepped away from her desk. Worse yet, the revised figures made her appear complicit in covering up irregularities. Her heart pounded. This could ruin me here or anywhere else. She recalled that Veronica had been near her desk that day. Could Veronica be trying to sabotage her? That evening, after most people had gone home, she confronted Wellington in his office, documents in hand. "Sir," she began, her voice tremulous, "I need you to see these. I didn't make these changes, but they're traced back to my account." Doug Wellington frowned, flipping through the pages, his gray eyebrows knit together. "This is serious, Anna." She explained her theory about someone else logging in under her credentials. He didn't comment on who might be responsible, only pursed his lips. "I'll look into it. For now, don't mention this to anyone." Leaving the office, Anna felt the walls closing in. Accusations of fraud, even if false, could end her career. Her mind spun with worst-case scenarios, losing her job again, being blacklisted from her industry, and disappointing the new friends who believed in her. She trudged onto the sidewalk, clutching her coat collar against a sudden gust of wind. Once home, she attempted to relax by flipping through channels on TV, but her phone kept buzzing with urgent emails. Eventually, she turned it off, longing for an anchor. She almost texted Sam to confess everything, but decided she needed tangible answers first. Meanwhile, Dennis encountered his own crisis. A rumor circulating among staff suggested that Director Parker was redirecting funds for the after-school programs, money that came from the modest grant, to a new standardized test prep initiative. "That can't be legal," Gabriella muttered when Dennis told her. "That grant was meant for the students' creative projects." Furious, Dennis confronted Parker in the hallway. "Are you using our funds for test prep materials?" Parker shrugged dismissively. "The priority is boosting scores. The entire school benefits." Dennis's voice shook with anger. "Then you need to return the grant or at least ask for permission. We made a commitment to donors." Parker gave him a cold stare. Be careful, Matthews. You're already on thin ice with your favoritism warning. I can't protect you if you make too much noise. The threat was clear. Keep quiet or risk your job. That evening, Dennis pushed open his front door, finding his father, Gerald, hunched over a crossword puzzle. The tremors in Gerald's hands were more pronounced, yet he stubbornly refused assistance. I'll manage, he insisted, eyes still on the puzzle. Dennis explained the situation at school, voice trembling with frustration. I can't stand by and watch him misuse those funds. But if I press the issue, I might lose my position. Who'd look after you then? Gerald set down his pen and fixed Dennis with a determined gaze. It's not about who looks after me, he said quietly. It's about who you are. Remember your mother's words. Integrity is the beacon when all else is dark. Dennis's eyes burned with tears he refused to shed. I just wish this didn't mean risking everything. Across town, Anna paced in her living room, her own moral compass spinning. Could she forge ahead at Wellington, knowing someone might be framing her for financial irregularities? Yet she'd worked so hard to prove her worth here. She recalled the night she met Dennis, how safe she'd felt letting her guard down, even if only for a little while. She wished she had someone like him to confide in now. Instead, she felt adrift, unsure who in her professional circle she could trust. As the hours ticked by, both Anna and Dennis found themselves wrestling with a crisis of faith. Their institutions, corporate or educational, seemed to prize success over ethics, ambition over honesty. Each asked themselves the same question: how far am I willing to go to defend my principles, and at what cost? Rain began pattering against the windows again, a quiet reminder of the night that had intertwined their paths. Neither realized it yet, but an even bigger storm was brewing, one that would demand a leap of faith far beyond their comfort zones. Standing at the edge of personal and professional ruin, they would both have to choose whether to bend to the system or stand firm, trusting that doing right would somehow pave the way for a better tomorrow. The city was awash in another unseasonal downpour, reflecting the mood of everyone battling burdens they couldn't easily resolve. Anna stood by the panoramic window in a smaller conference room at Wellington and Associates, clutching a folder of evidence that proved she hadn't tampered with the client files. It had taken a late-night session with Marcus Chen, combing through digital access logs, to unearth the truth. Someone else had accessed her account. The logs showed suspicious activity aligned with Veronica's login sessions. Anna's heart pounded with both relief and dread. She had proof of her innocence, but exposing Veronica might spark a corporate firestorm. Outside, thunder rumbled as Anna presented the findings to Doug Wellington. He studied each page methodically, then exhaled, setting them down. "You're sure about this?" he asked, voice surprisingly gentle. Anna swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." "If you compare these network records, you'll see the logins occurred whenever my account was open, but I wasn't at my desk. The pattern matches Veronica's schedule." Silence followed, broken only by the rain beating against the windows. Finally, Wellington looked up, his stern expression tinged with something akin to respect. "You did the right thing bringing this to me," he said. "I'll deal with Veronica. For now, keep focused on your projects. I expect them to run smoothly." His words were terse, but Anna sensed he believed her. She nodded, relieved beyond words, but also emotionally exhausted. As she left his office, she knew a corner had been turned. The question was whether the firm would rally behind her or find a way to bury the scandal. Across Chicago, at Westwood Public High, Dennis summoned every ounce of courage he had. He'd organized a small meeting of concerned parents and teachers to confront Principal Parker about the redirection of the grant money. "This isn't right," Dennis insisted, addressing the small crowd in the library. "We promised these funds would go to our history and arts program. The donors are expecting tangible results, and so are the students. Parker, seated behind a folding table with a pained look on his face, tried to defend his decision. "Our test scores are lagging. The board wants improvements." One of the parents, Mrs. Hernandez, Miguel's mother, spoke up in a quiet but firm voice. "My son was close to dropping out, Mr. Parker. It was Mr. Matthews's program that convinced him to stay. Test scores matter, yes, but so does inspiring our kids." Realizing he was outnumbered, Parker shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I'm not the villain here. I have responsibilities. But maybe we can work out some allocation that satisfies both sides." The mood in the library lifted slightly, though the tension still hovered. Dennis glimpsed Gabriella in the back, smiling at him through tears. He felt a surge of gratitude. He wasn't alone in this fight. That evening, both Dennis and Anna found themselves on the cusp of major change. Dennis returned home to Gerald, eager to share that Parker was on the verge of backing down. "Seems like he doesn't want a public scandal," Dennis explained. Gerald managed a weary smile. "You did what was right, son. I'm proud of you." Meanwhile, Anna sat in a quiet corner of her apartment, gazing out at the rain-slicked street. Sam had urged her to celebrate clearing her name, but Anna felt more introspective than celebratory. She'd passed a crucial test, proving her innocence and integrity, but the cost in stress and disillusionment had been steep. Would she ever truly feel secure in the corporate world, where secrets and sabotage seemed par for the course? Just then, her phone chimed with a new email. Opening it, she saw it was from Doug Wellington himself, commending her thorough research and extending an invitation to lead the upcoming project for a new educational partnership. Her eyes widened. This was the very collaboration James Wilson had mentioned, the one aiming to bring corporate funding to local schools. She scanned the details. The initiative would involve coordinating with public educators, developing marketing strategies, and showcasing the positive impact on the community. It dawned on Anna that this could be the perfect fusion of her expertise and her yearning to do work that mattered. A gentle thrill coursed through her. The rain continued outside, reminiscent of that fateful night, but now she felt differently, less lonely and more determined. She glanced again at the email, spotting a date for the first major meeting. "I'm ready for this," she told herself, remembering how her father had once said that real opportunities sometimes arrive disguised as challenges. In that moment, she felt a sense of vindication. She might not have reconnected with the man who'd helped her through the storm, but she was forging a path that resonated with the values they'd shared in that brief yet revealing encounter. Neither Anna nor Dennis knew it yet, but the next step in their journey would bring them face to face once more. Each had fought a battle for integrity and emerged a little braver, a little surer. And in the pounding heartbeat of Chicago's relentless rain, fate was quietly preparing its next move, an intersection of purpose, spirit, and the spark of a connection that had never fully gone away. Anna arrived at the Wellington and Associates headquarters early, nerves humming with anticipation. She carried a stack of neatly printed proposals in one arm and her laptop bag in the other. Today was the big day, the initial meeting to discuss a groundbreaking educational partnership between Wellington's firm and a cluster of public schools, funded in part by James Wilson's consulting group. Though Anna was confident in her marketing pitch, a part of her felt an inexplicable flutter, as if something much larger than a project was at stake. The expansive conference room featured floor-to-ceiling windows, framing Chicago's skyline. Anna set up her materials at the long table, greeting colleagues with polite smiles. Doug Wellington, perched at the head of the table, looked uncharacteristically animated. This partnership could boost the firm's community reputation. Soon, James Wilson walked in, all easy charm and a quick grin for Anna. "Excited to see what you've prepared," he told her, taking a seat. Moments later, the glass door slid open again. Anna's gaze lifted. And there he stood, Dennis Matthews. He wore a simple button-down and slacks, looking every bit the dedicated teacher he was. The moment their eyes met, the rest of the room seemed to fade. Her pulse quickened, a swirl of recognition and disbelief washing over her. They hadn't exchanged numbers, hadn't seen each other since that stormy night. Yet here he was, looking just as astonished as she felt. It took all of Anna's composure to maintain a professional demeanor as introductions went around. James explained that Dennis was a representative from Westwood Public High, one of the schools targeted for support. Anna offered her hand. "Anna Scott," she said, voice catching slightly. Dennis clasped it gently. "Dennis Matthews." Their eyes locked in an unspoken conversation. "So it's you." The short exchange held a world of acknowledgement, and though neither elaborated, both felt an unseen bond reaffirmed. The meeting commenced. Anna presented a cohesive plan, linking Wellington's marketing prowess to the school's needs, highlighting the benefits of improved technology, broader educational programs, and community engagement. She spoke with the poise she'd cultivated through years in the corporate world, but a tremor of excitement underpinned each sentence. Dennis, seated across the table, listened intently, occasionally jotting notes. He admired her clarity and empathy, how she framed the project not as charity, but as an investment in students' futures. When Dennis took his turn, he outlined the realities of working in underfunded schools, outdated textbooks, crumbling facilities, and countless students like Miguel who stood on the brink of giving up. "It's not just about money," he emphasized, voice steady but impassioned. "It's about showing these kids that people in positions of influence actually believe in their potential." Anna felt a tug in her chest, recognizing the sincerity that had drawn her in on that long-ago night in the rain. Halfway through the discussion, Veronica Palmer slipped in late. She tossed a curt nod toward Anna, but otherwise kept her distance. Anna ignored her presence. Veronica's recent misconduct was still under Wellington's internal review. For once, the tension at the table didn't faze Anna. She was too focused on Dennis's every word, resonating with his hopes and challenges. After 2 hours of spirited dialogue, Wellington adjourned the meeting. The group dispersed, pockets of conversation breaking out near the windows. Anna and Dennis found themselves briefly alone by the refreshments table. He cleared his throat, offering a hesitant smile. "I've thought about you, our conversation that night," he admitted softly. "I just never imagined I'd run into you here." Anna's cheeks warmed. "I've thought about you too. Honestly, I wondered if I'd ever see you again." She had to fight the urge to laugh at the surreal timing of it all, how life had spun them apart just to bring them back under such formal circumstances. A soft pause followed. Then a colleague approached Dennis with a question, and he had to excuse himself. Before he stepped away, he murmured, "Don't leave without saying goodbye." Anna nodded, a flutter in her stomach that felt equal parts excitement and relief. Their paths had intersected again, and this time they had no intention of letting the moment slip through their fingers. Later that same afternoon, as the corporate bustle quieted for lunch, Dennis and Anna found themselves walking side by side through the lobby of Wellington and Associates. A few acquaintances lingered to chat, but both made quick excuses. They had agreed, almost wordlessly, to grab a coffee at a nearby cafe, away from the polished halls and prying eyes. Nestled on a busy Chicago street corner, the cafe was modest but inviting, its large windows revealing rows of cozy tables. Dennis held the door open, allowing Anna to pass. Inside, the aroma of roasted beans and the murmur of subdued conversation enveloped them. It felt like a protective cocoon, shielding them from the corporate world outside. They settled at a small table by the window. Anna curled her fingers around a ceramic mug, feeling uncharacteristically nervous. For weeks, she had replayed in her mind the night Dennis gave her a ride home in the pouring rain. His kindness, their easy conversation, the inexplicable sense of connection. Now, it was surreal to see him in daylight. No downpour, no frantic desperation. Just two people with a second chance to share what had happened in the interim. "So," she started with a tentative smile, "you're the teacher behind this new pilot program. James spoke so highly of you." Dennis's eyes brightened. "And you're the marketing guru who's impressing Doug Wellington. Small city after all, huh?" They laughed, the tension dissolving ever so slightly. Between sips of cappuccino, they pieced together each other's life stories post-Tempest. Anna revealed her rocky transition after being laid off, how Wellington and Associates gave her an opportunity she hadn't expected. She glossed over the office politics with Veronica, but admitted there had been complications. Dennis, for his part, described the battles he fought at Westwood, the budget cuts, Principal Parker's skepticism, and Miguel's near dropout crisis. "I nearly gave up," he confessed, voice quiet. "But then I remembered how you told me that night you'd just lost your job and still found the courage to accept help from a stranger. It inspired me to keep going." A gentle blush spread across Anna's cheeks. She stirred her coffee to avoid his gaze, her heart thudding with admiration. "That night," she admitted, "I was at my lowest. But you had a way of making me feel less alone. Like I wasn't just a failure." Her words hung between them, charged with both gratitude and lingering vulnerability. Dennis looked at her earnestly, recalling how she had opened up about losing her parents, about the uncertainty she felt. "I'm just glad we met," he said simply, "and got this chance to talk again." They switched gears to discuss their current collaboration, bridging corporate funding with real classroom needs. Anna expressed how thrilled she was to work on something that felt meaningful. Dennis nodded in agreement, his gaze warm. "This is a big step for the school," he said, "and for me, personally, I've never taken on anything quite this large. But if it helps even one kid see a future for themselves, it's worth all the challenges." Time slipped by quickly as they traded stories and dreamt about the ways their partnership could reshape education in Chicago. Anna found herself opening up about her lingering sadness over her parents. Dennis spoke of his father, Gerald, whose Parkinson's was slowly limiting his independence. They each recognized in the other a depth of compassion that was rare, an empathy born from loss and perseverance. Eventually, their conversation ebbed into a comfortable silence. Outside, crowds drifted along the sidewalk, oblivious to the small miracle unfolding in the cafe. Anna gently set her mug down. "I'm really glad we reconnected," she said softly. "Maybe we can, spend more time talking about all this, away from conference rooms and deadlines." Dennis's smile reached his eyes. "I'd like that. A lot." He glanced at his watch, wincing slightly. "But I have to head back for a meeting with my principal. He's not exactly the most flexible guy." With a reluctant chuckle, they gathered their things. Before stepping out, Dennis paused. "Anna, I know it's short notice, but would you want to join me at a community event my school's hosting Saturday afternoon? It's just a small fundraiser, but it'd mean a lot if you could see the students in action." Her eyes lit up. "I'd love to," she said, and in that instant it felt as though the rain had lifted once more, clearing the path towards something profoundly new, and undeniably theirs. The following weekend found Anna navigating the crowded hallway of Westwood Public High, searching for the makeshift art gallery that Dennis had invited her to see. Though it was a modest affair, student-created posters pinned to corkboards, ceramic projects displayed on collapsible tables, the energy was electric. Parents, teachers, and curious neighbors meandered through the space, admiring the kids' work. Laughter and animated chatter rose from clusters of students eagerly explaining their creations. Anna spotted Dennis in conversation with Miguel, the teen who nearly dropped out. Miguel looked more confident than she'd imagined. Tall, earnest eyes, gesturing passionately at a large poster recounting immigrant stories in Chicago's history. When Dennis noticed Anna in the crowd, his face lit up. He excused himself and hurried over, greeting her with a small wave. "You made it," he said, voice warm. "Welcome to the heart of our program." She took in the colorful displays, the hand-drawn maps and historical timelines, each piece bursting with an authentic perspective that textbooks rarely capture. "This is incredible," she replied, genuinely moved. "You've managed to bring history to life." Dennis beamed, clearly proud of his students. "They did the real work," he said modestly. "Gabriella, our art teacher, gave them the tools. I just nudged them along." Soon, a slender woman with dark curls approached. "You must be Anna," she said with a bright smile. "I'm Gabriela Santos. Dennis told me you helped secure part of the funding for this." Anna quickly shook her head. "We're still ironing out the partnership details, so I can't take credit yet, but I'm so happy to see what's possible." Gabriela's eyes glowed with gratitude. "We're thrilled to have outside support. It means the world to these kids." As the afternoon rolled on, Anna found herself introduced to teachers, parents, and a few board members. Each person seemed genuinely grateful for any assistance that Wellington and Associates might provide. More than once, Anna had to brush aside compliments. She was simply doing her job. Yet seeing the tangible difference it made here filled her with a renewed sense of purpose. Toward the end of the event, she and Dennis slipped away from the crowd and stepped outside. The school courtyard was surprisingly peaceful, framed by a few sturdy oak trees. Dennis led her to a bench near a modest community garden, where a handful of herbs and flowers grew. "I like coming here when I need a break," he confessed, gesturing at the sprigs of rosemary and basil. "I guess it reminds me that things can grow even in tough soil." Anna sat beside him, the late afternoon sun gilding the edges of his hair. "It's a beautiful metaphor," she murmured. They fell into a reflective silence, letting the hum of distant traffic fill the gaps. Eventually, Anna spoke, her voice tinged with curiosity. "So, how do you balance all this? Your dad's health, your passion for teaching, battling school politics?" He exhaled slowly. "Some days, I feel like I'm falling short everywhere. My father is proud but needs more help than he'll admit. My sister thinks I'm spreading myself too thin." He paused, then looked at her earnestly. "But this work, helping students find their voice, fuels me, and meeting you again." He allowed a small, bashful laugh. "It feels like finding something I didn't know I was missing." Her heart fluttered. She understood that longing intimately, pursuing a career to fill a void, striving to make her parents proud even after they were gone. She reached for his hand. "I feel that too. Like we're building something new, not just in our careers, but in ourselves." They stayed like that for a while, hands gently clasped, the sun slowly dipping beyond the school rooftop. Anna thought of how her life had changed in just a few months, from losing her job to discovering a renewed sense of purpose, from walking alone in the rain to finding an unexpected kinship. It amazed her that a single act of kindness, a car ride in a storm, could blossom into possibilities so real and transformative. A gust of cool wind rustled the garden's leaves, and Dennis turned, grinning at a burst of laughter coming from the students still inside. "Want to head back?" "They're probably eager for an audience," Anna smiled, rising from the bench with lingering warmth in her heart. Together, they walked back into the school, ready to cheer on a new generation discovering its own voice. 3 months after their reunion, Dennis and Anna found themselves balancing two growing relationships, their deepening connection with each other and the professional partnership between Wellington and Associates and Westwood Public High. The initial educational initiative was a rousing success, inspiring talk of expanding the program to neighboring schools. Anna spent hours crafting proposals, while Dennis traveled to meetings with local principals, showcasing the triumph of their pilot project. Despite their busy schedules, they carved out time for quiet dinners and long walks along the Lake Michigan shoreline. Anna was pleasantly surprised by how natural it felt to let Dennis into her personal world. It was as if she'd found a confidant who understood her vulnerabilities, the grief she still carried for her parents, the lingering fears of not belonging at Wellington. He listened without judgment, offering small reassurances that seemed to mend parts of her she didn't know were broken. Dennis, likewise, found himself sharing more than he ever had. Anna learned about his mother's final months battling cancer, how her unwavering optimism shaped his approach to teaching. He explained how his father, Gerald, was once a skilled craftsman who built intricate wooden furniture. "Parkinson's is cruel," Dennis said one night, eyes clouding with sadness. "He can barely carve anymore." Anna squeezed his hand in sympathy, feeling his love for his father resonate with her memories of her own family. Their differences, however, didn't vanish. Over dinner, in a small Italian restaurant one evening, a mild tension surfaced. Dennis spoke passionately about underprivileged students, proposing new ways to divert corporate money into community-led initiatives. Anna, fresh from a meeting where she'd witnessed just how cutthroat the corporate arena could be, shook her head. "I want that too," she said gently. "But sometimes the system only budges a little at a time. We have to be strategic." Dennis sipped his water, reflecting on her words. "You're right," he conceded slowly. "I just don't want to lose sight of why we're doing all this." Anna reached across the table, brushing her fingertips over his. "We won't," she promised, "as long as we keep talking like this, honestly." Their relationship grew stronger through each honest conversation, each compromise. Weekends found them visiting Gerald, whose health was declining, but whose spirit seemed lifted by Anna's presence. On one particularly touching afternoon, Anna helped Gerald complete a simple puzzle, a tradition he used to share with his wife. Gerald gazed at her with kind, searching eyes. "You love my son," he stated more than asked, voice trembling slightly. Anna felt tears prick the corners of her eyes. "Yes," she replied softly. "I believe I do." Dennis heard about the moment later, and it stirred in him a profound gratitude. He'd been wary of introducing anyone to his family too, yet Anna fit so seamlessly. Even Lauren, his pragmatic sister, began warming up to the idea that her brother had found someone who not only cared for him, but also understood the weight of familial responsibility. Meanwhile, at Wellington and Associates, Anna continued to excel. Doug Wellington offered her a small promotion, recognizing her drive and ethical stance. Benjamin Taylor and Marcus Chen celebrated by inviting her out for lunch, praising her ability to juggle moral integrity with business savvy. Veronica Palmer, still dealing with the fallout of her sabotage attempt, kept her distance, opting to focus on less high-profile assignments. Anna rarely gave Veronica much thought these days. Her life was too full of purpose and a new kind of happiness to dwell on old resentments. Yet as fulfilling as their blossoming romance and professional achievements were, life was never simple. Gerald's condition grew more precarious, demanding additional resources. Dennis worried he might have to reduce his teaching hours to care for his father. Anna felt torn between supporting him and her demanding workload at Wellington. Both found themselves at a junction of personal dreams and obligations, longing to protect the delicate love they'd forged while still answering the call of ambition and family duty. In quieter moments, when they strolled along the water's edge, or shared late-night cups of tea, they spoke about the future. Their words revealed both hope and trepidation. Were they ready to build a life together amidst these mounting challenges? Could their bond withstand the tension between corporate demands, educational reforms, and an ailing parent? They didn't have all the answers, but they had each other. Two souls who first connected in a desperate moment of rain-soaked vulnerability. And somehow, that seemed enough to face whatever was coming next. 6 months after Dennis and Anna's fateful reunion in the Wellington conference room, their lives brimmed with both promise and pressure. The educational partnership had exceeded everyone's expectations, prompting talk of expansion to several other schools in the district. Anna was key to steering the project's marketing and fundraising strategies. She regularly stayed at the office past sunset, fine-tuning presentations and coordinating with local stakeholders. While each new success gave her a rush of satisfaction, it also reminded her of the precarious balance she fought to maintain. Dennis, meanwhile, was busier than ever. Between lesson plans, after-school programs, and increased responsibilities at home, he found himself running ragged. Gerald's health had deteriorated enough that he suffered a frightening fall, prompting a heated family discussion about assisted living options. Lauren, growing more concerned, insisted they find specialized care. Dennis resisted, holding fast to the idea that Gerald should remain with loved ones as long as possible. The resulting tension weighed heavily on him, gnawing at his sense of stability. One drizzly evening, Anna arrived at Dennis's place, a bouquet of groceries in her arms to cook dinner together. She found him near the dining table, sifting through paperwork, medical forms, pamphlets for care facilities, insurance statements. Stress carved lines into his normally gentle features. "Hey," she said softly, setting the groceries aside. "Long day?" He looked up, eyes reflecting exhaustion, mixed with relief at her presence. "Yeah," he admitted. "I've been trying to figure out how to afford in-home nursing care for Dad. My teaching salary only goes so far." Anna stepped closer, resting a comforting hand on his shoulder. "We'll figure it out," she assured him, though inside she felt her own wave of anxiety. "I'm here to help however I can." As they prepared a simple meal, they talked about the upcoming school board meeting, where Dennis would present the successes of the pilot program, hoping for more permanent funding. He confessed a simmering fear. "What if I take on more administrative duties to earn extra income and end up losing my connection with the students? Teaching is who I am." Anna understood the dilemma all too well, thinking of her own job. Doug Wellington had hinted at a transfer to the firm's new office in New York, a huge opportunity that could skyrocket her career but uproot her from Chicago. When they finally sat down to eat, the candlelight flickered on their worried faces. Anna hesitated, then admitted what she'd been wrestling with. "Doug wants me in New York. It's not a done deal yet, but he's strongly suggesting it. It'd be a promotion, more responsibility, but it also means leaving everything here." She trailed off, her eyes meeting Dennis's. His heart twisted at the thought of losing her. "Would you even consider it?" he asked gently. Anna sighed. "I don't know. I love you, I love the work we're doing together, and yet part of me thinks about all the doors that would open if I left." Their conversation teetered on the brink of conflict. Both recognized they were at a crossroads, with decisions that could reshape their futures. "If we're meant to be," Dennis said slowly, "we'll find a way to make it work, right? Even if it means traveling or adjusting schedules." But behind his hopeful tone lay an unspoken question. Could distance or diverging career paths pull us apart? Just then, Dennis's phone buzzed. It was Lauren, sounding frantic about a new complication in Gerald's care plan. They cut the meal short, quickly packing away the leftover food. Before leaving, Anna turned to Dennis, drawing him into a firm embrace. "We'll handle this," she murmured against his shoulder, wishing her own words would settle the unease coiling in her stomach. Outside, the drizzle had turned heavier, casting the streetlights in a shimmering haze. As Anna drove home, her mind toggled between the possibility of leaving Chicago and the overwhelming desire to stay. Dennis, rushing to his father's side, pondered whether he should sacrifice his teaching ambitions to provide for Gerald full-time. In their separate cars, the same questions replayed. Would following one path mean forfeiting another? Could love, strong as it felt, bend to such pressures? And though neither had the answers, both held close the memory of that first stormy night when an unexpected gesture of kindness proved that life-changing moments often arrive when least expected, reminding them that sometimes the greatest leaps of faith lead to the most astonishing rewards. A year had passed since the night Anna and Dennis found each other again in the Wellington conference room. In that time, they'd worked tirelessly to align their lives, juggling careers, family obligations, and the budding promise of a lasting partnership. Early on a Sunday, Anna stepped out of her Lincoln Park apartment, pausing to marvel at how different her life looked from just a year ago. She was about to move in with Dennis, an arrangement they'd agreed upon after countless long talks, soul-searching, and finally, a shared certainty that they wanted a common home. The new apartment they'd chosen stood in a middle-ground neighborhood, equidistant from Westwood Public High and the downtown offices of Wellington and Associates. It was modest, but with enough space for Gerald, who, due to his Parkinson's, now needed closer supervision. Dennis's sister Lauren had begrudgingly come around to the idea. At least he won't be alone, she'd conceded, seeing the positive effect Anna had on both father and son. Anna arrived at the building, a neat 3-story brick walk-up near a tree-lined street. Dennis met her curbside, wearing a faded college t-shirt and jeans. He offered a tired grin. "Ready to officially merge our chaos?" She laughed, relieved to see that despite the challenges, his humor remained intact. The moving truck was parked down the block, and Gerald, seated in a folding chair on the sidewalk, supervised the movers with a determined glint in his eye. Inside, boxes piled up in the living room. Some were labeled Anna, Kitchen, others Dennis, School Docs, and still others Gerald, Fragile. It felt like an integration of worlds, tangible evidence that they were forging a shared life. Sam dropped by to help unpack, teasing Anna about domestic bliss, while Gabriella popped in with a plate of homemade empanadas. Marcus Chen from the office even arrived, though he mostly hovered in a corner until Anna reassured him he wasn't in the way. By mid-afternoon, the place was buzzing with conversation. Gerald, determined to contribute, directed the arrangement of furniture. "Put the bookshelf near that window," he insisted, tapping the floor with his cane, "so Dennis can read his students' essays in the sunlight." Dennis's eyes softened at his father's gesture. Despite worsening tremors, Gerald made a point to remain part of every decision, a testament to how essential he was in their growing family dynamic. Amid the bustling, Anna's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. Doug Wellington. With a quick apology, she slipped out onto the small balcony for a moment of privacy. He was calling to confirm final arrangements for a corporate event unveiling the expanded educational program. The partnership now included multiple schools, and the event promised media coverage highlighting the success. "You'll be the face of this," Doug said, "a shining example of what integrity and strategy can accomplish." Anna felt a swell of pride, but also a pang of nerves. This was her largest public speaking engagement so far. Finishing the call, she stepped back inside to find Dennis hauling a box of textbooks, sweat beading on his forehead. "Need help?" she asked, placing a supportive hand on his back. He nodded gratefully, setting the box down. "You okay? You looked serious on that call?" "It's just work stuff," Anna replied, exhaling. "We have a big event coming up, a chance to showcase all we've built." She paused, voice softening. "But I was also thinking about how much I want you by my side. Wellington wants me to lead the presentation, but it's your story too. The classrooms, the students." Dennis smiled at her earnestness. "If they'll have me, I'd be honored." The idea of standing alongside Anna at a corporate function felt daunting, but also right. After all, their collaboration was the heart of the program's success. By dusk, the chaos of unpacking began to subside. They cleared enough space to order pizza and collapse on the couch, a piece of furniture that, like them, was newly shared. Gerald dozed in his room, tired from the day's exertions. Sam and Gabriella had gone home, promising to return tomorrow for final touches. In the dim glow of a standing lamp, Dennis laced his fingers through Anna's. "We're really doing this. Merging everything," he said quietly. She nodded, leaning her head on his shoulder. "I know it won't be easy," she murmured, "but every step we've taken so far has felt purposeful." They let the evening hush wrap around them, absorbing the reality of this new chapter. Outside, a gentle rain began, pattering on the balcony railing, a reminder of the storm that had once bound their fates. Now they welcomed the sound, a soft lullaby that whispered of resilience, unity, and the promise that together they could weather any season life brought their way. 2 weeks later, the much-anticipated corporate event took place in a gleaming downtown conference hall. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the Chicago skyline, and rows of neatly arranged chairs faced a modest stage. Banners proclaimed the new partnership between Wellington and Associates, James Wilson's consulting firm, and Westwood Public High. Stacks of glossy brochures detailed the program's expanded scope, promising additional resources for students across several city schools. Anna, dressed in a tailored navy dress, stood near a table loaded with name tags. She felt a twinge of anxiety, the usual pre-presentation jitters. Dennis, by her side in a crisp blazer, offered a reassuring squeeze of her hand. "You've got this," he whispered. She managed a smile, remembering how far they'd come. It wasn't just about her career anymore. This was a shared mission to show what heartfelt collaboration could achieve. Gradually, attendees filled the space: business executives, school board members, teachers, local politicians, and even some curious parents. Anna spotted Miguel in the crowd, wearing a collared shirt, looking slightly starstruck by the grand setting. Next to him was his mother, beaming with pride. "Just think," Dennis said, leaning toward Anna. "A year ago, Miguel was ready to drop out. Now he's here as a shining example." At the appointed time, Doug Wellington opened the program, welcoming everyone with his commanding presence. He spent a few minutes thanking the various partners, then introduced Anna as the driving force behind the marketing and communications strategy. She stepped onto the stage with measured poise, heart thudding but voice clear. Leaning into the microphone, she recounted how the program had begun with one underfunded school, a handful of dedicated teachers, and a corporate team willing to invest more than just money. Slides behind her showed photos of art displays, students engaged in group projects, teachers guiding lively discussions. "When we started," Anna told the audience, "we focused on test scores and metrics. But over time, we realized it's about giving students the chance to own their stories and shape their futures." She paused, scanning the crowd. "And none of this would have happened without the courage and vision of educators who see potential where others see only obstacles." She motioned Dennis onto the stage, and a ripple of applause followed as he joined her. Nervousness sparked in his eyes, but he inhaled and addressed the audience. I'm Dennis Matthews, a history teacher at Westwood Public High. I can attest that real change happens when we connect resources to actual student needs. It's more than just funding, it's mentorship, it's validation, it's hope. He introduced Miguel, now a high school senior, planning to attend college on a scholarship partially funded by the program. The room erupted in applause, and Miguel stepped up tentatively to share how he'd discovered a love of learning through oral history interviews of his own community. I realized my story mattered, he said, voice trembling with emotion. If I give up, all those stories fade. But if I move forward, maybe I inspire others to do the same. By the time the presentations concluded, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Even Doug Wellington dabbed discreetly at his eyes with a handkerchief. School board members looked equally moved, and corporate sponsors murmured about how this event surpassed typical PR gatherings. It felt genuine, deeply personal, more than just another line item on a budget sheet. As the evening wound down, Anna and Dennis mingled with guests, receiving congratulations and fielding questions about next steps. James Wilson cornered them both, his expression triumphant. "This is bigger than I ever imagined," he marveled, "and it's only the beginning. I'd love to see this model replicated across the state." Anna's heart soared. The impact of their work reached further than she dared hope. Later, in a quiet moment at the back of the hall, Anna and Dennis found themselves standing by a large window, gazing out at the city lights. The lingering hum of conversation ebbed as people slowly trickled out. She looked at him, her eyes brimming with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, "for believing in this, for believing in me." He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, drawing her close. "We did it together," he replied. Outside, the skyscrapers shimmered, but inside that conference hall, their shared journey shone just as brightly, the culmination of a spark first struck on a stormy night, now transformed into a beacon of hope for countless students and families. 2 more years quietly slipped by, marked by steady growth in Anna and Dennis's professional accomplishments and the deepening of their personal bond. The success of the educational partnership had inspired other districts to try similar models, and Anna found herself fielding inquiries from organizations nationwide. Her role at Wellington had evolved. She now managed a small but impactful team dedicated to socially responsible ventures. Dennis, meanwhile, saw his student enrollment double in the after-school history and arts program. He also completed a short but meaningful research paper on the positive effects of community storytelling in education, which garnered local press attention. The press clippings thrilled him less than the tangible proof that students were thriving, each new project reaffirming his belief in the transformative power of empathy. Their shared apartment had become a home, filled with stacks of lesson plans, marketing briefs, and reminders of Gerald's presence. Though Parkinson's had advanced, Gerald's spirit remained resilient. He spent his days telling stories to visiting students or helping Dennis refine his lesson plans, offering historical tidbits from his own life. On weekends, Anna would push his wheelchair to the nearby park where he'd watch children play and sometimes remark on how the world had changed and how that was a good thing. One overcast afternoon, Anna and Dennis decided to revisit the bus stop where they'd first crossed paths in the rain. It had become a yearly ritual, a small tribute to the moment that forever altered their destinies. Armed with umbrellas, they strolled through the damp streets until they reached the covered bench. Rain pattered on the sidewalk, reminiscent of that fateful night. Together, they sat on the bench, the city's hustle a distant hum. Dennis linked his arm through Anna's. "Remember how hesitant you were to accept that ride?" he teased gently, and she laughed. "I still can't believe I did. But I'm so grateful I did." They shared a soft grin, memories flowing between them without need for words. The sky drizzled on, but the rain felt comforting now, a witness to their growth. That evening, back at home, Gerald waited eagerly, wearing a slightly rumpled sweater and holding a small plush bear. He grinned when they walked in. "You're back from your pilgrimage?" he asked, eyebrows dancing with humor. "You two and that bus stop, like it's a holy sight." Anna laughed, shrugging off her wet coat. "It kind of is," she said with genuine warmth. A few months later came an announcement that sealed their circle. Anna was pregnant with their first child. The news filled the household with anticipation and tears of joy. Dennis kissed her belly each morning before work, and Gerald, though frailer, took pride in offering grandfatherly advice for the child's future. "Teach them to value kindness," he said one day, voice trembling with age. "Never forget how one small act can change a life." In the final weeks of her pregnancy, Anna accompanied Dennis to a school event, a small ceremony dedicating a new wing for arts and history programs funded by Wellington and Associates. Standing in front of a plaque bearing both her name and Dennis's, she felt the baby kick. She glanced at him, tears welling up. "We've come a long way," she whispered. He nodded, remembering the heartbreak, the storms, the triumphs, all woven together like threads in a tapestry. Days after the dedication, Gerald asked Dennis to push his wheelchair to the courtyard garden behind the school. The autumn air was crisp, leaves fluttering in golden waves. He looked up at Dennis. "Promise me," Gerald said gently, "when my granddaughter arrives, you'll show her that even a drizzle can lead to a rainbow." Dennis swallowed the lump in his throat. "I promise." Then, with a wistful smile, he pushed his father along the garden path, remembering a time when that same courtyard seemed like an oasis of hope. By the time winter set in, Anna went into labor. Gerald was too weak to visit the hospital, but Lauren and Sam stood by, sending messages back to him. After hours of focused breathing, tears, and Dennis's unwavering presence, their daughter arrived, a healthy, wide-eyed little girl they named Ellie, partly in tribute to Mrs. Eleanor Winters, who once saved Anna from a leaking apartment and reminded her that help often appears when you least expect it. As the days blurred in a mix of diaper changes and late-night feedings, Anna and Dennis looked at Ellie with an awe that dwarfed all their previous accomplishments. A single, improbable car ride through a rainstorm had led them to this moment, cradling a new life infused with the kindness they had once shared as strangers. Their journey had indeed come full circle, each step toward love and meaning growing from that single seed of human compassion. 3 years after that rainy night of fate, Anna and Dennis settled into a peaceful rhythm. Their daughter Ellie, now a rambunctious toddler with bright blue-green eyes, tottered around the apartment on chubby legs. Gerald, though increasingly frail, found immeasurable joy in watching his granddaughter grow. Each morning, he greeted Ellie with a gentle wave of his unsteady hand, telling her short, funny stories and basking in her delighted giggles. One crisp spring afternoon, Gerald sat in the living room, Ellie on his lap, while Anna and Dennis quietly observed. The little girl reached up, patting the wrinkles on Gerald's cheeks as though fascinated by every groove. He grinned. "You know," he began, his voice softer now, "her curious little face reminds me of the day I first heard how you two met." Dennis and Anna exchanged smiles. They told Gerald bits and pieces, but never the full story in a single breath. How Anna had lost her job, missed her bus, and stood drenched in a ruthless downpour. How Dennis, haunted by memories of his own helpless car accident, decided to stop and help. How each carried burdens they'd barely acknowledged to anyone else, yet found solace in that small moment of generosity. Gerald cleared his throat, addressing Ellie in a playful, grandfatherly tone. "See, my little one, your mommy was all alone at a bus stop one night, soaked to the bone. And your daddy, well, he couldn't just drive by. Ellie stared up, wide-eyed, as if she understood every word. Anna felt tears prick her eyes. She and Dennis had relived that story many times, but hearing it through Gerald's voice, cracking with both age and emotion, felt like a benediction. Weeks passed, and Gerald's health waned further. One evening, he took a turn for the worse, requiring hospitalization. Dennis and Anna stood by his bedside, exchanging worried glances. Even Lauren flew in from out of town, clutching Gerald's hand. He drifted in and out of consciousness, but managed to murmur small reassurances, as if comforting them instead of the other way around. On a quiet Sunday, the family gathered around as Gerald, propped against pillows, recounted one final piece of advice. "Keep showing that kindness," he said, gazing at Dennis and Anna with unwavering affection, "not just to each other, but to everyone you meet. That's how our world becomes kinder, bit by bit." That very night, with his loved ones around him, Gerald slipped away peacefully. Tears and an ache of loss filled the hospital room, but also a profound gratitude. He had witnessed the birth of his granddaughter, the union of Anna and Dennis, and the fruits of a life dedicated to small acts of goodness. The following weeks were a blur of funeral arrangements and condolences, yet in the midst of sorrow, a quiet sense of purpose emerged. Anna and Dennis vowed to honor Gerald's legacy by continuing the work they'd started. The expanded educational program now bore his name in part, the Matthews Community Initiative, a tribute that would fund arts and history projects in local schools, reminding everyone that empathy could indeed reshape lives. One mild evening, Anna found herself in the same spot where she'd once stood waiting for a bus that never came. This time, Dennis was with her, Ellie toddling between them, her tiny sneakers scuffing the pavement. A gentle rain had begun to fall, more of a sprinkle than a deluge, dappling the sidewalk with droplets. Anna picked Ellie up, pointing to the sky. "Hear that?" she whispered. "That's the rain, the same rain that helped us find Daddy." Dennis looked on, heart full. He remembered how Anna had initially shrunk back from him, wary of a stranger's offer. Then the decision, the unspoken trust, the tentative conversation in a cramped Honda Civic. It all felt both impossibly distant and intimately close. With one arm around Anna and the other holding Ellie's chubby hand, he couldn't help but marvel at the life they'd built from such a precarious beginning. A flicker of movement caught Anna's eye. A young woman, umbrella clutched in hand, approached the bus stop, looking anxious as she peered at her phone. Recognizing the familiarity of the scene, Anna and Dennis exchanged a smile. Without a second thought, Dennis stepped forward. "Excuse me," he said gently to the woman. "Are you waiting for the last bus? The schedule might have changed tonight. Do you need a ride?" The young woman hesitated, eyeing them warily before noticing Ellie perched contentedly in Anna's arms. She exhaled in relief, as though reassured by the family tableau. "Actually, yes," she replied, gratitude flickering in her eyes. "That would be wonderful." As Dennis led the way to their car, now a slightly larger family sedan, Anna stood still for a moment, absorbing the poetry of the moment. A single ride can change everything, she thought, tears springing to her eyes. It was Gerald's lesson, her parents' lesson, her own lesson. With Ellie's little fingers tangled in her hair, Anna followed her husband and the stranger into the drizzle, knowing that perhaps they were offering someone else the first chapter of a transformed life. Cradling Ellie close, Anna caught Dennis's gaze across the raindrops. Their shared smiles said more than words ever could. This is how our story began and how it continues. A reminder that even under the darkest skies, kindness can kindle a light that never dies. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.